This HOA Karen seriously thought she had me, especially when she called the cops. But she had no idea her whole plan was about to blow up right in her face. You know how some people get a little taste of power and it goes straight to their head? Well, in my neighborhood, that person was Karen. Obviously not her real name, but if the shoe fits. And her shoe was a sensible orthopedic clog she wore to march around the neighborhood, hunting for violations. Her weapon of choice? A clipboard and a complete misunderstanding of her own authority. For years, she was just a minor annoyance, a background character in our quiet suburban life. But that all changed when my wife and I decided to finally build our dream deck. Suddenly, Karen promoted herself to the main villain of our story. Little did she know, I was more than ready for the final showdown. It all started out simply enough. After saving for years and planning for months, my wife and I were finally building a big multi-level deck on the back of our house. This wasn't just some project. It was a dream. We were picturing summer barbecues, quiet mornings with coffee, and a safe place for our kids to play. We did everything by the book. I mean everything. We hired a great contractor, submitted the plans to the HOA board, and after a couple of small tweaks, we got their official written approval. We pulled all the city permits and had them displayed right in our front window. I had a 3-inch binder stuffed with every document you could imagine. Approvals, permits, blueprints, contacts, you name it. I was ready for anything. I had read our HOA rules, cover to cover, and I knew our project was 100% compliant. And that brings us to Karen. Karen was our neighborhood's self-appointed guardian of all things boring. As president of the HOA, she wielded her title like a queen. Her whole identity seemed wrapped up in enforcing rules, a lot of which she just made up on the spot. This is a woman who was known for measuring grass with a ruler and leaving snippy notes about recycling bins being left out for 5 minutes too long. We'd had a small run-in with her before when she tried to fine us for having a non-conforming welcome mat. It was a whole thing. So, when the lumber and materials showed up and the crew started working, I knew it was only a matter of time before she made her grand entrance. I just didn't think she'd go nuclear so fast. The crew started work at 8 a.m. on the dot, a full hour after city and HOA rules said construction noise could start. They were pros, polite, clean, and efficient. They were just getting the foundation laid out when I saw her. Karen. She marched across her perfect lawn, clipboard in hand, with this grim look on her face. She walked right past me and went straight for my contractor, Dave. "You need to shut this down immediately," she snapped, her voice sharp. "You are in direct violation of HOA noise ordinances." Dave, bless his heart, just looked at her, then glanced at his watch. "Ma'am, it's 8:15 a.m. We're well within the legal hours for construction. The bylaws state that excessively disruptive noise is not permitted," she shot back, tapping her clipboard. She was just making things up again. "Okay, time to step in." I walked over, put on a polite smile, and said, "Hi, Karen. What's the problem? We have our permits and HOA approval right here if you want to see them." She scoffed. "Your approval is irrelevant if you're breaking the rules. Your materials are an eyesore, and your crew's vehicles are parked improperly." The truck was legally parked on the street, not blocking a thing. The materials were neatly stacked on my own property. She was just reaching for anything she could. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice totally calm, "I promise you we are following every single rule. I have all the paperwork right here." I held up the binder, my holy book of preparedness. She didn't even look at it. I am the president of this HOA, and I am issuing a verbal warning. Shut this down, remove these materials, and submit a new plan. If you don't, you'll face daily fines of $500, and I will have this project shut down. It was such an empty threat. I knew the whole HOA board had to vote on fines like that. She couldn't just stop approved construction on her own. I calmly told her we'd be continuing our work, and that she could bring up any legitimate concerns with the board at the next meeting. She just stared at me. Her eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this," she hissed, then spun around and marched back to her beige fortress. I knew this wasn't over. The next 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. Karen was plotting, and I had a feeling her next move was going to be a big one. Things finally came to a head on a sunny Thursday afternoon. The crew was framing the main deck, and the sound of saws and nail guns filled the air. The beautiful sound of progress. And that's when I saw her again. This time, she wasn't holding a clipboard. She was holding her phone to her ear, standing right at the edge of my property. "Yes, I need to report a major disturbance," she said, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "There's illegal construction happening. It's a safety hazard. They're using dangerous power tools, and they refuse to stop. I'm worried about the children." My jaw hit the floor. She was actually calling the cops. She was making up a story about safety hazards and illegal work just because she couldn't get her way. It was such an insane abuse of 911 that I was just stunned for a second. The crew stopped working, all looking at me. I just shook my head and held up a hand to let them know it was okay. I was ready for this. I went inside and grabbed my binder. About 15 minutes later, a police car rolled down the street and parked out front. A single officer got out. He looked tired, like he'd seen this exact kind of suburban drama 1,000,000 times. Karen practically sprinted over to him. "Officer, thank you. This man," she said, pointing a shaky finger at me, "is doing unauthorized construction. He's creating a dangerous environment and has no permits." The officer listened patiently, then turned to me. "Sir, what's your side of this?" "Afternoon, officer," I said calmly. "We're just building a deck. Here's our official approval from the full HOA board, signed by the secretary. Here are our city building permits, our noise ordinance paperwork, and the blueprints." I opened the binder and handed it to him. He took it and started flipping through the pages. Karen kept trying to butt in. "But the noise, officer! And look at this mess!" The officer just held up a hand to silence her without even looking up from my paperwork. He spent a solid 2 minutes going through everything. He read the HOA letter, checked the permit dates, and even glanced at the plans. Then a tiny, almost invisible smile appeared on his face. He looked up from the binder and looked straight at Karen. "Ma'am," he said, his voice completely flat. "Everything here is perfectly legal and in order. He has his HOA approval and all the city permits. This is a civil issue, not a police matter. If you're enjoying watching this, Karen, get a dose of reality. Do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate seeing justice served." The backfire was a thing of beauty. Karen's face went through about 5 different shades of red. She looked shocked, confused, angry, and then just humiliated. But he's violating," she sputtered. The officer's patience was clearly gone. He handed the binder back to me and faced her. "Ma'am, let me be clear," he said, his voice firm and serious now. "This gentleman has done everything right. You, on the other hand, are wasting law enforcement resources with a bogus complaint. People call 911 for actual emergencies. A permitted construction project during legal hours is not an emergency. Do not call us again unless there is a real crime. Are we clear?" Karen was speechless. Her face was beet red. She looked like a malfunctioning stoplight. The whole neighborhood, who had definitely been watching from their windows, now had a front-row seat to her public meltdown. My construction crew was trying not to laugh, and failing. Defeated, she just gave a stiff nod, turned around, and did the walk of shame back to her house without looking back. The officer gave me a small nod, like we were in this together, and said, "Have a good day, sir. Sorry for the interruption." He got in his car and drove off, leaving this beautiful Karen-free silence behind him. The second his car was gone, Dave, my contractor, just burst out laughing. "Well," he said, clapping me on the shoulder, "I've dealt with some crazy HOAs, but she takes the cake." The crew all chuckled and got right back to work. The sound of their saws was now the sweet, sweet sound of victory. In the weeks after that, work on our deck continued without a single problem. It was finished on time, on budget, and it looks amazing. But the real win wasn't just the deck. It was the peace that came over the neighborhood. Karen became a ghost. She stopped her patrols. A month later, she resigned as HOA president for personal reasons. We hardly ever saw her outside anymore, and if we did, she'd just stare at the ground and hurry away. Her power was built on bluffs and bullying, and the moment one police officer called her on it, her whole little empire just crumbled. My neighbors were thrilled. They thanked me for standing up to her. Everyone had horror stories, fines for lights, warnings about paint. I wasn't the only one she'd bullied. The police showdown is now legend. My deck's a monument to being prepared and watching her plan backfire. Every evening I smile at that binder of paperwork. The best way to beat a tyrant? Be so right that they can only call the cops and humiliate themselves.